Kelvin Hill says, listening to your assessment of this year's wide receivers in the draft, sounds like most teams will be able to draft a good one as it's deep with talent. Do you see the wide receivers following the running backs as becoming devalued in the draft and at a second contract stage because there's so many? Now, we've talked about this a little bit already, but like, how do you think teams are now? You think teams are going to change the way they fill their wide receiver rooms? Like, is there a shift coming in the way?
I do think there's a shift to a degree.
Attack this.
To a degree, right? I think that there'll be less reluctance maybe to draft and replace the 6th, the 7th, 8th year receiver, right? And just go, hey, we're seeing all around the league. It's second and third rounders coming in right away, and they're playing and they understand the game and they can do it. We could save a little money, right, getting rid of receiver who's in his 7th year and get this guy in the 3rd round and depend on him. That's where I think it's going to lose some value. Where I also think it could lose some value is for the second wide receiver number 2s as we go along, for the same type of reason. To go like, hey, there's so many coming out, right? And there's guys even in free agency that people don't really know, right? And he wasn't in the right spot, but he's a number 2. We're going to get him for a lower number and make him our number 2 instead of paying the guy everybody talks about who we think is a number 2, but he thinks he's a number 1 and he wants big money, right? I think that's where it's going to hurt. But it's not going to hurt the guys we talked about at the top of the show. Right? There are proven star commodities where I don't think it's going to ever hurt the top tier of the market. Right? That's where I think it's a little different maybe than the running back position, where I do think the drop-off of trading A.J. Brown to go to Treylon Burks is too great of a risk and way too big of a drop-off as compared to, let's just say, we get rid of Derrick Henry and we got Tajay Spears and we still got a 1,000-yard rusher this year, right? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? But A.J. Brown to Treylon Burke, we were like, no, we lost like 1,300 yards of offense. Like, what do we do there? So those guys I don't think is going to lose the value. I think it's going to be the second-tier guys second, third-tier guys that could be in trouble. You know, veteran receiver who wants $12 or $15 million a year. They're going to be like, no, you can take 6 or 7 or we'll draft somebody else, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where it's going to hurt those guys, but not quite to the extent of running backs. We'll see where it goes. Hey, and to your question here, it's a great question in my personal life here with Kelvin Hill. I went to the Knicks, the Madison Square Garden, the Big East Final Four on Friday night.
Yeah.
I was sitting close to Aaron Jones, right?
Oh.
You know what he asked me at halftime in one of the games?
What?
He goes, hey, I'm getting the running backs. We're getting together. He goes, we want to try to fix this running back market. He goes, what do you think we should do? He goes, you got any ideas? And I said, you're talking to the guy here that's started this conversation 8 years ago when I first got into podcasts and how much bullshit this was. And I used all my lines, right? You guys are the fastest. You guys could fight a D tackle in the middle of the locker room and everybody like, oh, man, the running back and the D tackle, it's a good fight. Look at this. Get your popcorn, right? I mean, they're the strongest pound for pound, right? They're the freakiest guys on the team. And they're getting paid like they're the 27th best guy on the team, right? So they don't get it. And he asked me, and he goes, "Well, I need some ideas. I don't know what to do." And he goes, and I go, "Well, I got some for sure." And he was like, "Well, please tell me." He's like, "What's the first one?" And I said, all running backs, right, should be free agents after year 1, right? Or there's like a baseline number. Like if you rush for 1,000 yards as a rookie or 850, you get to become a free agent. You've proven that you're that, right?
Yeah.
Or some other way in which they can hit free agency in a quicker way. Or a way where we can get, hey, the running back, right, dollar for dollar doesn't count the same way as everybody else on the roster, right? You see that like in the NBA, they have like, what do they call that? Like special exemptions of players, right? Where it's like, we pay them $100 million, but really only $75 million counts against the cap, right?
Okay.
I'm just using round numbers there.
Yeah.
To where things like that
you
can
went
be
over
done.
this all with Aaron Jones during the
Halftime.
Big East.
Yeah, it might have been in between the first and second game. Yeah, semifinals.
Yeah.
Well, I had a smoke and a drink as usual, but no, we were just talking ball. And so those would be some of the things I certainly
was
would
he
look
writing
at.
them? Was he like, okay, I got that?
No,
was
but he took my number because he's like, when I get into this with the running backs, I want to visit this conversation.
Here would be my thought on that. I didn't expect to talk about this, but why? Why does it matter? Why does it matter if running backs are getting what they think they deserve compared to other positions. I mean, what we're operating in right now is as free a system as there is.
Yeah.
Right? It's the free market. Right? Why do we need to finagle it in such a way to get this one position group paid a little bit more compared to other position groups would be my question.
I hear you there, because one, for what I said, these are really special athletes and players that are not getting valued the way they should to a degree. The second thing I would say...
But I would say to that, what's preventing them from getting valued? Because
there's so many.
Well, but that's a free market,
I
right?
know. It's a free market,
you have to limit the number of running backs that could go into. But yet
everybody knows the value of how awesome of Saquon Barkley is.
But how do you determine a value? Is a free market is the best way to do that.
No, I get you. And the
if
fact
it was
that
worth it for teams to pay him more,
be successful and win Super Bowls and do it without the top tier guy,
hard.
I get it. It is. It's hard. My biggest reason, though, would be this: that no position is running back with the physicality and the shortness of the career. Yeah. That would be the biggest thing, right? You're talking about the freakiest guys in the sport, and if you get drafted in the first round, you never really get to go to free enterprise like you're talking about and become I'm open to the market.
No,
you never
true.
get that, and that's up, right? Here's Saquon Barkley, the freakiest guy on the Giants for the last 5 years, and this was the first time he got to hit the open market. That's not right. And never mind, he's gotten hit by 90,000 dump trucks and other people just killing him all the time. So that's where I do think I'd like it to be fixed.
I think is a good point. The nature of the position,
right,
and the status of the position, because I do think you can make the argument that the NFL is a better entertainment product if you have big superstar running backs like Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Thurman Thomas,
Derrick Henry,
me growing up.
those guys,
Derrick
right,
Henry,
right.
Those guys are the stars of the game.
Right,
you want to make sure
was one of the stars of the game.
They're protected and well compensated, and that you have more players through the pipeline that want to be those running backs.
And then Pete's writing this down right here in our notes too. And here's another one of the things that I've said in the past: you have a running back performance-based pool, right? Buy that, where you hit these numbers, you make this certain amount of money no matter what, right? You're top 5 in the NFL in rushing, right? You make this money, period. And it doesn't count against the cap. It almost is like the NFL rewards these guys for, hey, thanks for being so entertaining and ducking your head down and getting clobbered on the head with 90 roundhouses from Mike Tyson this year, let alone the other 90 uppercuts he sent you and all the 90 below the belt into your thigh shots he sent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where it is. I didn't mean to go this way either, but it's an interesting conversation.
It is interesting. Pete notes here, he goes, do we have a lot of good young wide receiver prospects now because of a shift where the freakiest young athletes decide to play wide receiver instead of running back? And the counter to that would be is that worse?
Yeah.
What if the game just migrates into that and evolves into that, and it's like
it has to a degree. We see teams that go, we don't run the ball, so we use the short passing game and the screen game to do our running game.
And then there will be so few running backs that the ones that do emerge will get paid a ton.
Hey, I think of Jabril Peppers, right? Jabril Peppers was going to be the number 1 running back in the country. He was the number 1 running back in the country. He made a conscious thing here in New Jersey to go, I'm not playing running back for the reasons that Pete just stated there.
Yeah.
Right? So, yes. And I think hey, listen, I think there's some guys, that are playing a receiver in the NFL right now that were probably running backs and went, wait, what? I don't want to do that. It's my career's going to be short. I'm not going to make the money. Let me do that. So, that's a big part of it, let alone the schools are throwing the ball more, 7-on-7, all of that. So playing receiver is cooler now than it was when we grew up, when you were like, when you went home after a high school game, you're like, Mom, friends, we threw the ball 8 times today. 8. I got to throw it 8. I'm like a Dan Marino of high school football, right?
If you played wide receiver in high school, when I grew up, you would block. You would run out. You would kind of
get a reverse,
run your defensive guy out of the play.
Yeah, right.
That was it.
Exactly
basically.
right. Now, receivers in a big-time program, they're or the quarterbacks, they're like, I got 20 targets today.
Yeah.
Just today. The quarterback threw it 44 times. So that's where the game and the world has changed that way. Yo, homies, what's up? I know it's the off-season, but it's never the off-season on Chris Simms Unbuttoned. Me and Ahmed Fareed are going to be here for it all. We got free agency. We're going to break it all down. The draft, the rankings of positions. Of course, we're going to unpack it all. Hit subscribe, get to my free agency reactions, 2024 draft rankings, and more. Thanks again for watching. Peace out, homies. See you soon.